The first of two decent updates to two of my favourite sim racing games came out this week, and it's Formula Truck for RaceRoom. Now, I'm a huge fan of RaceRoom. I've owned it for many years, and I've slowly been buying all of the cars and tracks from its base free-to-play scheme to have a plethora of everything that I could possibly ask for from this game. And Formula Truck adds a really unique and fresh perspective to sim racing in RaceRoom. The idea behind this is that you've got these humongous 1100 horsepower and mega torque based trucks that are absolute behemoths of their truck and basically feel too chonky for the roads that they're trying to get round. But that's half of the fun. It also adds in a couple of new mechanics as well. The first one is a 16-speed gearbox, which not only includes high and low gears, but then a high and low gear slot as well from your H shifter. Some of that goes slightly over my head because I'm a dirty control player, but if I map the right keys, it does allow me to use 16 speeds of a gearbox. You don't necessarily have too much to play with in terms of gear ratio for a couple of reasons. Firstly, some of those lower gears are just for getting yourself off the grid, and then once you're racing, actually, I found myself purposefully limiting the amount of gear shifts that I'd want because the rev range before you'd have to shift gear is really tiny, and to be honest, I found myself going just as fast, having to kind of coast around on higher gears and then like revving it up and trying to get away again, just as much as dropping down gears and then losing momentum. The other thing around that though is that you're also capped out at 160 kilometers per hour, so you don't necessarily have to play around with gear ratios too much because you're always going to hit that limit. And to be fair, I don't think I've even touched the gear ratios, and I'm not even sure you can. So all of the other setup options are still there for you. But yeah, I just found that quite interesting. That actually that almost... Because gear ratios are some of the parts of the setup that really differentiates like a top tier driver from someone else. And so being able to kind of have everyone on an even playing field, I think could be quite good for league racing. The second interesting new mechanic is water-cooled brakes. Now, if you've been in truck racing games beforehand, this isn't anything new necessarily, but it's new for RaceRoom. It gives you 200 litres of water that you can either automatically through the computer, when it's deemed appropriate to do so, soak the brakes and cool them down, or, as I'd recommend, manually map it to something on your steering wheel or controller or keyboard, so that you can then manually cool your brakes with water whenever you need. The developers say that this is good for about a 35-minute race maximum, and I wouldn't recommend probably going beyond 30 minutes in a Formula Truck race. A, for that reason, because once your brakes are really, really hot, it's very difficult to ever get them cooled back down again, and you would be definitely heavily lifting and coasting around all of the corners as you go. The second one is that actually the tyres kind of last about half an hour before they give out. Slightly shorter for me because I'm more of an aggressive player with a controller and I'm still getting the finessing of exactly how the dead zone and all of that kind of stuff works with a truck, because I always find that every vehicle has a slightly different need when you're playing with a controller. So yeah, I found that I was burning through my tyres slightly quicker than probably what was projected for most people, but that's because I'm a dirty controller user. I know. Be kind. But what I did find with this is because of that water cooling brakes, plus the lack of wanting to change gears, is that this lended itself to being like a behemoth graceful driving, almost like fat ballerinas or fat princess, I guess, because what I was finding is that the more angular you are with these, because they've got longer wheelbase, but also because they're heavily front loaded to weight at the front rather than at the rear, you pendulum swing really quickly with these trucks, and so you can quite quickly get yourself into like an awkward snake where you've overpowered yourself but you're not quite fully aligned and you've got the grip and the tyres warm enough to kick out of a corner, and so you'll end up especially with a curb, because these trucks run low and they're quite easy to rip up and lose grip on a curb and then spit you out. So you have to kind of really finesse that feathering on the throttle but also feathering on the accelerator, particularly in the first couple of laps of a race where your tyres are cooler over time. That also combines with just the spatial awareness feels slightly different with Formula Truck. And it's because you've got longer, vehicles, but also because they're just not capable of doing that turning circle that other vehicles do. So you have to give people that are doing that dive bomb down the inside a wider berth than you normally would, because they can't back out of something and they'll quite happily careen into you. And then it causes like a bowling ball with like loads of pins, because one hits the other, hits the other, hits the other. It's very quickly easily done to cause like a little pinball smash effect with loads of trucks in the wall or gravel. I've had great fun with this, alongside with Automobilista's DLC being released this week too. I think it's a great time to be a sim racer, so I'll hopefully see you out on track. Let me know any comments or questions that you've got about Formula Truck down below. I'm not the best expert out there, but I am loving this edition and I'm really glad I picked it up. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.